The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Brooklyn brownstones, painting the cobblestone streets in a warm, nostalgic glow. It was a scene Evelyn Hayes, a recently disabled architect, had dreamed of for months, finally returning home after extensive renovations. The centerpiece, a sleek, meticulously designed wheelchair ramp, seamlessly integrated into the classic facade, allowing her to access the building on her own. She'd poured her heart and soul, not to mention a significant chunk of her savings, into ensuring the ramp was both functional and aesthetically pleasing, a testament to her belief that accessibility could be beautiful. As her assistant, Mark, carefully wheeled her onto the newly installed ramp, a sense of triumph washed over Evelyn. This wasn't just about getting into her apartment. It was about reclaiming her independence, her life, in a city she adored. She looked forward to working again. Evelyn was ready to tackle some unsolved mysteries of architecture and take on new challenges, but the celebration was short-lived. As Mark wrestled the final moving box inside, a figure emerged from the shadows, Agnes Plumtree, the HOA president of their building, clutching a clipboard like a shield. Agnes, a woman whose perfectly coiffed silver hair and perpetually pursed lips suggested a strict adherence to rules and regulations, marched determinedly up the ramp. "Ems Hayes," Agnes announced, her voice tight with disapproval. "I must inform you that this structure violates several provisions of our building's aesthetic guidelines. I am delivering to you a violation notice regarding the ramp's unharmonious aesthetic. It's simply not in keeping with the character of our historic building." Evelyn's dreams of normalcy began to crumble like ancient plaster. This was a beginning of a journey of discovery, not of the Brooklyn brownstone, but of something Agnes had yet to reveal to her. For now, she would try to get some rest in her own home. The nightmare had just begun. Evelyn wasn't naive. She understood that adjustments to a historic building wouldn't be met with universal acclaim. She'd anticipated some resistance, perhaps even a formal meeting to discuss the ramp's design. But Agnes Plumtree's relentless campaign of harassment was something else entirely. The first violation notice, delivered with such chilly precision, was followed by another, and another, each one meticulously detailed, citing obscure clauses from the HOA's voluminous rulebook, each one more absurd than the last. It felt less like a legitimate concern for the building's aesthetic and more like a personal vendetta. Clara, her sister, was understandably furious, ready to unleash her journalistic skills to expose what she saw as blatant discrimination. Evelyn, however, pleaded for restraint. "Let's try to work within the system, Clara," she urged. "Maybe we can reason with her." This attempt at peaceful reconciliation led to another frustrating discovery. As Evelyn reviewed the HOA meeting schedule, a chilling pattern emerged. Every single meeting coincided precisely with her physical therapy appointments, crucial sessions that helped her regain strength and mobility. The dates weren't mere coincidences, they were deliberate acts of exclusion, designed to silence her voice and prevent her from defending her actions. The latest piece of correspondence arrived not as a formal notice, but as a personal note. A lavender-scented letter, penned in elegant calligraphy, landed in Evelyn's mailbox. Inside, Agnes politely suggested Evelyn consider relocating to another neighborhood more suited to her needs. It was a thinly veiled ultimatum, dripping with condescension. This letter felt different from all of the other letters. This was a personal attack. This letter was to let her know that this was something else. Evelyn realized this wasn't just about a ramp. It was about Agnes's deep-seated prejudice and unwavering need for control. It was time to uncover who was behind Agnes's behavior and why she had to stop. This was now an unsolved mystery that needed to be solved. The lavender letter was the last straw. Clara, pacing Evelyn's meticulously redesigned living room, her voice tight with barely suppressed rage, slammed her laptop shut. "This is ridiculous, Eve. She's not going to stop. She's escalating. We have to fight back." Evelyn, watching her sister's fiery display with a mixture of amusement and concern, sighed. "And what exactly do you propose, Clara? Start a social media war? Leak her personal information to the press? That's not how I operate. But you could operate that way," Clara shot back, her eyes gleaming with a mischievous glint. "You are the governor, after all." The revelation hung in the air, a potent card held close to Evelyn's chest. She had deliberately kept her political identity hidden, craving a semblance of normalcy after a grueling campaign and the life-altering accident that had confined her to a wheelchair. She desperately wanted to avoid any perception of special treatment, to simply live a quiet life, to focus on those architectural unsolved mysteries of history that had captivated her so many times before. The question now wasn't just about the ramp. It was about the principles she held dear: fairness, equality, and the right to live with dignity. Could she stand by and watch Agnes Plumtree, fueled by prejudice and a lust for power, bully her into submission? Or was it time to leverage her position, risking the hard-won privacy she so desperately craved? Clara, sensing her sister's internal turmoil, softened her tone. "I know you don't want to pull rank, Ev, but this isn't just about you anymore. This is about standing up to bullies, about fighting for what's right. Agnes's actions have exposed an urgent need for improved accessibility laws. You are the only one who can stand up to her." As Evelyn stared out the window at the slowly darkening Brooklyn skyline, the weight of her decision settled upon her. The gubernatorial gambit was tempting. But was it worth the cost? This was a true test of her leadership, and Evelyn knew her choice would have far-reaching consequences. While Evelyn wrestled with the moral implications of wielding her gubernatorial power, Clara decided to take a more proactive approach. Transforming the sun-drenched study, once filled with architectural blueprints and scale models, into a makeshift war room, she embarked on a digital deep dive into the world of Agnes Plumtree and the Hawthorne Heights HOA. Fueled by a potent cocktail of sisterly loyalty and journalistic curiosity, Clara meticulously scoured online records, HOA documents, and local news archives, searching for any hint of Agnes's darker side. Clara was determined to solve this local mystery. What she found was unsettling, and frankly, more complicated than she expected. A series of hushed-up disputes with other homeowners, revolving around oddly similar grievances related to aesthetic violations and community standards, began to paint a pattern of targeted harassment. There was Miss Rosenberg and her loud kids, the Wilsons and their unapproved landscaping, and so many more. But most of the information had disappeared. Then, she stumbled upon something far more intriguing. Subtle, yet persistent, rumors of financial improprieties within the HOA. Whispers of misallocated funds, unapproved expenditures, and a web of hidden transactions involving Plumtree and Sons, a landscaping company owned by Agnes's nephew. Clara took a deep breath. "This is going to be bigger than I originally thought," she whispered. "Unsolved mysteries of this magnitude require the right tools," Clara muttered to herself, downloading tax records and filing open records requests. "And I'm just the girl to get them." The late hours melted away, fueled by caffeine and a growing sense of unease. This wasn't just about a wheelchair ramp anymore. This was about power, control, and a potentially deep-seated corruption that had festered within the seemingly idyllic community of Hawthorne Heights for far too long. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, Clara stared at the tangled web of evidence, a grim determination hardening her gaze. Now, she was determined to uncover every single illegal thing Agnes has been doing. This was a story that needed to be told, and Clara was just about ready to tell it. The Hawthorne Heights Community Center, normally a place of potlucks and bridge tournaments, crackled with an unusual tension. Agnes Plumtree, perched at the head of the polished mahogany table, surveyed the HOA board members with a practiced air of authority. Sunlight streamed through the panoramic windows, highlighting the steely glint in her eyes. "As you all know," Agnes began, her voice resonating with a calculated blend of concern and conviction, "we are here today to address a matter of paramount importance: the community's well-being." The recent controversy surrounding Evelyn Hayes's ramp, fueled by neighborhood gossip and Clara's subtle inquiries, had clearly unnerved her. Agnes needed to regain control, to squash any dissent before it bloomed. "Our bylaws are quite clear on the matter of aesthetic uniformity," she continued, her gaze sweeping across the faces of the board members. "While we sympathize with Ms. Hayes's circumstances, we cannot allow individual needs to supersede the collective good." She then introduced a proposal, a formal vote to declare the ramp a hazard to property values, and order its immediate demolition, citing a particularly vague clause buried deep within the HOA rulebook regarding enhancement of community well-being. But board member Mrs. Davies spoke up. Agnes, what has this HOA turned into? Are we really going to turn on Evelyn? She's barely been here for more than a week, and we are ready to destroy what makes her comfortable. The vote, Agnes knew, was crucial. If she failed to sway the board, her authority would crumble. Her carefully constructed facade of benevolent leadership would shatter, exposing the years of manipulated power. With a final impassioned plea for preserving the integrity of our beloved community, Agnes called for the vote, the fate of Evelyn's ramp, and Agnes' power, hanging precariously in the balance. And so it was that Agnes had found another way to continue the cycle of hatred. With the vote of the HOA board, Agnes was one step closer to getting her way. The shrill ring of Clara's phone shattered the pre-dawn silence. Disoriented, she fumbled for the device on her nightstand, her heart pounding in her chest. The caller ID displayed an unfamiliar number, but a sense of dread washed over her as she answered. Ms. Hayes, a gruff voice barked. This is Miller Construction. We're here to carry out the demolition order at your sister's property. Clara's blood ran cold. Demolition? The word echoed in her mind, a brutal, irreversible act that Agnes Plumtree had somehow managed to orchestrate. Leaping out of bed, she raced to the window, pulling back the curtains with trembling hands. The scene outside was like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. A behemoth bulldozer, its metal blade gleaming menacingly in the dim light, sat idling at the curb. Workers in orange vests milled about, unloading barricades and setting up a perimeter around Evelyn's property. The clock was ticking, and time was against her. Clara began a desperate frenzy of phone calls trying to reach Evelyn, their lawyer, anyone who could intervene and halt the impending destruction. Voicemail after voicemail, unanswered calls, a symphony of helplessness echoing her growing panic. Swallowing her fear, Clara bolted out of the apartment, intent on confronting the construction crew and delaying the demolition, buying Evelyn time. This is illegal, she screamed, as she ran towards the scene, waving her arms frantically. You can't do this. Show me the permit. The construction foreman, a burly man with a face etched with indifference, simply shrugged. Orders are orders, lady. Stand back. Tears streaming down her face, Clara realized she was alone, facing an insurmountable force of bureaucratic indifference. This was more than just a demolition. It was a blatant act of injustice, and Clara was powerless to stop it. She was ready to rally as many people as she could. Is there anyone who will help? She screamed out. The only thing she could do was wait for help to arrive. Her sister was counting on it. A distant whirring sound, barely audible at first, grew steadily louder, piercing the tense silence that had settled over Hawthorne Heights. As the first rays of dawn broke through the clouds, a news helicopter appeared on the horizon, circling like a predatory bird, drawn to a scene of chaos. Agnes Plumtree, standing on her manicured lawn across the street from Evelyn's brownstone, surveyed the unfolding drama with a chillingly serene expression. Her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her lavender suit impeccably tailored, she appeared every inch the composed leader, the protector of community standards. But beneath the surface, a thrill of triumph coursed through her veins. Her plan was working. Everything was falling into place. Neighbors, drawn by the commotion and the unmistakable roar of the bulldozer, began to emerge from their homes, their faces etched with a mixture of curiosity, concern, and apprehension. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Speculation mingled with hushed judgments. Had Evelyn finally crossed the line? Was Agnes simply enforcing the rules, or was something more sinister at play? Time seemed to stretch, each second an eternity, as the bulldozer lumbered closer to the ramp. Clara, still desperately pleading with the construction crew, was ignored, her voice lost in the mechanical din. She watched as the machine moved ever closer. Every piece of it was calculated. Agnes's gaze drifted upward to the news helicopter hovering above, a faint smile playing on her lips. This was her moment, the culmination of years of planning, scheming, and subtly manipulating the levers of power within Hawthorne Heights. She had finally purged that ramp. The bulldozer revved its engine, the metal blade glinting menacingly in the rising sun. The destruction was mere seconds away. For Agnes Plumtree, the state of emergency was not a crisis but a victory. Her vision for Hawthorne Heights was nearing completion. Her grip on power was about to be solidified. The only thing left to do was to savor the moment. The grating screech of metal against stone ripped through the morning air as the bulldozer's blade finally made contact with Evelyn's ramp. Chunks of the carefully crafted structure crumbled and scattered across the cobblestone street. a sickening visual manifestation of Agnes Plumtree's ruthless power. But before the destruction could continue, a piercing siren wailed in the distance, growing rapidly louder. A phalanx of black SUVs, lights flashing, barreled down the street, screeching to a halt in front of Evelyn's brownstone. Agnes Plumtree's triumphant smile faltered, a flicker of uncertainty clouding her eyes. What was this? From the lead vehicle emerged Evelyn Hayes, her expression resolute. Flanked by uniformed state troopers, she stepped out of the SUV and surveyed the scene with a gaze that radiated steely determination. It was time for the executive order. The order of what would happen next. Cease and desist, Evelyn commanded, her voice ringing with gubernatorial authority. This demolition is illegal, and it will stop immediately. A collective gasp swept through the crowd of onlookers. Jaws dropped, eyes widened, and whispers erupted as the reality of the situation began to sink in. The bullied neighbor was not just a disabled architect. She was the most powerful person in the state. As news cameras swiveled to capture every moment, Evelyn addressed the stunned crowd. Agnes Plumtree has abused her power, manipulated this community, and engaged in actions that are not only morally reprehensible, but also illegal. She gestured towards the ramp, the scattered debris a stark testament to Agnes' actions. Today, that ends. State troopers moved forward, placing Agnes under arrest. The illusion of control that Agnes had so carefully cultivated shattered into a million pieces, leaving her exposed and vulnerable. Agnes finally understood. This time, she was completely and utterly out of control, and her entire world was crashing down around her. All because of that damned ramp. The aftermath of Agnes Plumtree's arrest was a whirlwind of activity. State police swarmed Hawthorne Heights, meticulously combing through HOA records, interviewing neighbors, and piecing together the complex web of deceit Agnes had spun over the years. As the sun set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Evelyn and Clara retreated to Evelyn's apartment, seeking a moment of respite amidst the chaos. The air hung heavy with a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and disbelief. Evelyn, still adjusting to the weight of her revealed identity, sat silently by the window, her gaze fixed on the scattering of debris that remained of her ramp. Clara, ever the pragmatist, paced the room, phone pressed to her ear, fielding calls from lawyers, journalists, and concerned community members. The story had exploded, dominating headlines across the state, and sparking a national conversation about HOA abuse and disability rights. The Hayes family name was now a topic, but Clara didn't know if it was a good or a bad one. "It's worse than we thought, Ev," Clara said, hanging up the phone with a sigh. "They're finding all sorts of irregularities, hidden bank accounts, questionable payments to Plumtree and Sons, falsified invoices. It's all under her name." "What about the other homeowners?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely a whisper. "The ones she bullied, the ones she silenced. Will they finally get justice?" "That's what the police are hoping for," Clara replied, her tone laced with cautious optimism. "They're encouraging anyone who's been wronged by Agnes or the HOA to come forward. The dam seems to have broken. Everyone's ready to talk now." As the evening deepened, the gravity of the situation settled upon them. Agnes Plumtree's actions had exposed a systemic rot within Hawthorne Heights, a deep-seated corruption that had thrived unchecked for far too long. Evelyn and Clara's attempt to make sense of the mayhem. "There's so much that needs to change," Evelyn said. But amidst the darkness, a glimmer of hope emerged. With Agnes finally out of the picture, the community had an opportunity to heal, to rebuild, and to create a truly inclusive and equitable environment for all. And Evelyn and Clara would make sure that it all happened. The morning after Agnes Plumtree's arrest dawned with an eerie quiet. The news helicopters were gone, the police presence had diminished, and the streets of Hawthorne Heights were eerily empty. But beneath the surface, a seismic shift was underway. Fear, the invisible force that had kept Agnes's victim silent for so long, began to dissipate, replaced by a hesitant, fragile hope. The first to break the silence was Mr. Rodriguez, Evelyn and Clara's elderly neighbor. A quiet, unassuming man who had always kept to himself, Mr. Rodriguez approached Evelyn's brownstone, his eyes filled with a mixture of trepidation and determination. "Governor Hayes," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "I have something to tell you about Mrs. Plumtree." Mr. Rodriguez then recounted a story of petty harassment and blatant discrimination that had spanned years. He tells the story of when the HOA forced him to get rid of the garden his late wife loved. The story continues with all the other atrocities he had to face. As Mr. Rodriguez spoke, other neighbors began to emerge from their homes, drawn by his courage and the growing sense that the time for silence was over. A trickle of confessions soon turned into a flood, as homeowners shared their own stories of Agnes's tyranny and the HOA's complicity. Mrs. Davison recounts the way Agnes shamed her for having loud kids. Mr. Peterson reveals he was given a series of fines for having a broken mailbox. The tide was turning. What had begun as a hesitant trickle of dissent was now transforming into a powerful wave of community solidarity. The Hawthorne Heights HOA had morphed from a place for good to a place of all kinds of evil, and the neighborhood was changing for good. "It's time we took back our community," Clara said, her voice ringing with renewed purpose. "It's time we created an HOA that is truly representative of the people who live here, an HOA that values inclusivity, fairness, and respect." The word was getting around. The backlash was over, and the bandwagon was ready to be joined. The air in Hawthorne Heights buzzed with an energy unlike anything the community had experienced in years. Gone was the stifling atmosphere of fear and compliance, replaced by a palpable sense of purpose and collective action. The residents, united by their shared experiences of Agnes Plumtree's tyranny, were determined to rebuild not just Evelyn's ramp, but also the very fabric of their community. The rebuilding effort began with a symbolic act of defiance, tearing down the remnants of the demolished ramp. Neighbors, young and old, armed with hammers, shovels, and a shared sense of determination, worked side by side, dismantling the jagged remains of Agnes's aggression. Among them were Mr. Rodriguez, now a vocal advocate for community reform, and Mrs. Davison, no longer hesitant to let her children play freely in the neighborhood. Even Mrs. Peterson was back, but his mailbox was not broken. They came to show their support for not only their neighbor, but the community as a whole. As the debris was cleared, the focus shifted to the construction of a new ramp, one that would not only meet Evelyn's needs, but also serve as a powerful symbol of inclusivity and community solidarity. Architects, builders, and artists from across the city volunteered their time and expertise, eager to contribute to the rebirth of Hawthorne Heights. Evelyn and Clara, despite their exhaustion and the ongoing legal proceedings against Agnes, were at the heart of the rebuilding effort. Evelyn, drawing upon her architectural skills, collaborated with the design team, ensuring the new ramp was not only functional, but also aesthetically stunning, a seamless integration of modern design and classic brownstone charm. She took a moment to think of that mean woman, and what she had done to make everyone feel bad. Clara, meanwhile, worked tirelessly to organize volunteers, coordinate donations, and ensure that every member of the community felt included in the process. The process of making the new ramp involved everyone. It was the ultimate community project. As the new ramp began to take shape, a collective sense of pride and accomplishment washed over Hawthorne Heights. The structure wasn't just a means of access for Evelyn. It was a testament to the power of community, a symbol of resilience in the face of adversity, and a beacon of hope for a brighter, more inclusive future. Then the ramp was finally finished, a beautiful black ramp with metal adornments. The unveiling ceremony was a community celebration, filled with music, laughter, and tears of joy. Evelyn, her eyes shining with gratitude, addressed the crowd, her voice filled with emotion. "Thank you," she said, her voice echoing with gratitude. "From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank each and every one of you for showing us what it means to be a community." Standing beside her, Clara added, "This ramp isn't just for Evelyn. It's for all of us. It's a reminder that when we stand together, when we support each other, we can overcome any obstacle and build a better world, one ramp at a time." With that, Evelyn and Clara took each other's hand and cut the ribbon. As Evelyn and Clara stood beside one another, they smiled. They knew from then on, Hawthorne Heights was changed for the better. The newly rebuilt ramp, shimmering under the Brooklyn sun, had become more than just a means of access for Evelyn. It was a symbol of hope, a testament to the transformative power of community, and a constant reminder of the work that remained to be done. With the immediate crisis resolved, Evelyn turned her attention back to her gubernatorial duties, determined to translate her personal experience into meaningful policy change. The battle with Agnes Plumtree had revealed a stark reality. Accessibility and inclusion were not just matters of personal convenience. They were fundamental human rights that were often overlooked and systemically denied. To change this, Evelyn resolved to champion disability rights legislation, pushing for statewide changes to ensure accessibility and fairness for all. Working with her team, Evelyn crafted a comprehensive package of legislative reforms, targeting everything from building codes and public transportation to employment opportunities and educational resources. She knew that changing laws alone would not be enough. She needed to shift attitudes, to foster a culture of empathy and understanding that would permeate every level of society. The fight for disability rights was far from easy. And it was far from easy. Evelyn faced resistance from powerful interest groups, skeptical lawmakers, and segments of the public who were resistant to change. Despite these challenges, Evelyn remained steadfast in her commitment, drawing strength from the support of her family, her community, and the countless individuals who had been inspired by her courage and resilience. The news of the heroic governor fighting for the little guy spread like wildfire across the state, capturing the hearts and minds of people from all walks of life. Evelyn became a symbol of hope for the disabled community, a living testament to the power of perseverance and the unwavering pursuit of justice. But it wasn't just about grand gestures and legislative battles. Evelyn understood that true change began at the grassroots level, with individuals taking small but meaningful steps to create a more inclusive world. She used her platform to amplify the voices of disabled activists, to promote accessible businesses, and to encourage open and honest conversations about disability. As Evelyn continued her advocacy, Hawthorne Heights transformed into a model community, a beacon of inclusivity and acceptance that attracted visitors from across the state. Neighbors volunteered their time to create accessible community gardens, local businesses implemented disability-friendly policies, and schools integrated disability awareness into their curriculum, all thanks to the Hayes Home. The governor went to a local high school to try and inform the next generation. The Hayes Home, once a site of conflict and division, had become a hub of community activity, a gathering place for people from all walks of life who shared a common vision of a more just and equitable world. And as Evelyn sat on her newly rebuilt ramp, watching the children play in the sunlit street, she knew that the fight for disability rights was far from over. But the seeds of change had been planted, and the harvest was sure to be bountiful. For Clara Hayes, the battle against Agnes Plumtree had been a baptism by fire, a transformative experience that had reshaped her understanding of justice, community, and her own potential. While Evelyn navigated the complexities of gubernatorial politics, Clara found herself grappling with a profound sense of purpose, a desire to do more, to contribute more directly to the fight for a better world. Her career as a journalist, once a source of passion and fulfillment, now felt somehow incomplete. Reporting on injustice was important, but Clara yearned to be a force for change, to actively empower those who had been marginalized and silenced. The turning point came during one of her visits to Evelyn's office, a bustling hub of activity filled with disability rights advocates, community organizers, and policy wonks. Clara found herself drawn into their conversations, energized by their passion, and inspired by their unwavering commitment to creating a more just and equitable society. She began to learn about new ways of helping the community. It was then that Clara had an epiphany. Her skills as an investigator, a storyteller, and a communicator could be put to use in a far more direct and impactful way. She could transition her knowledge to help others. The best kind of job, she knew, was one that helped others and paid the bills. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, Clara made a life-altering decision. She would leave her career as a journalist and dedicate herself to advocacy work, focusing specifically on supporting disabled individuals and fighting against discrimination. This new journey would also inspire her to do good work that could bring her financial security. The decision was not without its challenges. Clara faced skepticism from some of her former colleagues, who questioned her motivations and warned her about the difficulties of working in the nonprofit sector. Her mom was also afraid she was taking too big of a risk. She tried to convince her there were other safer jobs out there, but Clara would not be turned away. Despite these obstacles, Clara pressed forward, fueled by her unwavering belief in the power of individual action and the transformative potential of community. She enrolled in a certificate program in disability studies, immersing herself in the legal, social, and medical aspects of disability. With the help of her certificate, she began working at a local non-profit organization that provided legal assistance and advocacy services to disabled individuals. The work was challenging, often emotionally draining, but also deeply rewarding. Clara found herself using her investigative skills to uncover discrimination in housing, employment, and healthcare, and her storytelling abilities to amplify the voices of those who had been silenced. This job had everything Clara needed in this next stage of her life. As Clara settled into her new role, she discovered a sense of purpose and fulfillment that she had never experienced before. She became a trusted advisor, a fierce advocate, and a beacon of hope for countless individuals who had been marginalized and discriminated against. She knew she was making a difference, not just in her community, but in the lives of individuals. She was helping shape a more just and equitable future for all. But none of this would have happened without the help of her sister. And that was what Clara was most grateful for. A year had passed since the tumultuous events that had rocked Hawthorne Heights to its core. Agnes Plumtree was gone, her reign of terror replaced by a new era of inclusivity, compassion, and community spirit. The scars of the past remained, but they served as a reminder of the importance of vigilance, the power of unity, and the enduring strength of the human spirit. The most visible symbol of this transformation was the community garden that had blossomed in the once barren lot across the street from Evelyn's brownstone. Residents, young and old, disabled and able-bodied, worked side by side, tending to rows of colorful flowers, fragrant herbs, and lush vegetables. The garden was a sanctuary, a place where friendships blossomed and differences were celebrated. Mr. Rodriguez, now a sprightly octogenarian, took particular pride in the garden, meticulously tending to his rows of tomatoes and peppers. He had even added a whimsical collection of garden gnomes, each one a quirky reminder of the individuality and diversity that defined the new Hawthorne Heights. The HOA, once a source of fear and oppression, had been completely overhauled, replaced by a democratically elected board committed to transparency, fairness, and the well-being of all residents. New rules were put in place to protect the rights of every family. They vowed that what had happened before would never happen again. The bylaws, once a labyrinth of arcane regulations, had been rewritten to prioritize accessibility, inclusivity, and respect for individual expression. Whole meetings were now open to all residents, and decisions were made through open dialogue and collaborative problem-solving. Even the once stifling atmosphere of conformity had given way to a spirit of joyful self-expression. Homes were adorned with colorful decorations, front yards bloomed with unconventional gardens, and neighbors greeted each other with genuine smiles. As Evelyn sat on her newly renovated ramp, watching the children play in the community garden, she felt a profound sense of peace and contentment. The long and arduous journey had been worth it. Hawthorne Heights was reborn. Everyone was living in peace. From the rebirth of Hawthorne Heights, several life lessons emerge. First, stand up against injustice, even when it feels daunting. Evelyn's initial reluctance to leverage her power reminds us that true strength lies in using influence for the greater good. Don't underestimate your own potential for change, no matter the scale. Second, community matters. The story emphasizes the strength we gain from supporting one another, build bridges, listen to others' stories, and actively participate in creating inclusive spaces. Consider volunteering your time, offering a listening ear, or simply showing empathy to those around you. Third, adversity can be a catalyst for growth. Clara's career change highlights the importance of remaining open to new possibilities and allowing challenging experiences to guide us towards fulfilling paths. Be willing to reevaluate your goals, embrace new opportunities, and discover untapped talents. Finally, lasting change requires perseverance. Evelyn's continued advocacy reminds us that creating a better world is an ongoing process. Stay committed to your values, remain adaptable, and never underestimate the power of collective action. Embrace these lessons, and you can transform your own life and build a more just and compassionate world.